Раз, раз. Ага. Всіх вітаю. Здравствуйте. Мене звуть Олексій Бондаренко.
Welcome everybody. I am the coordinator of the International Charity Foundation Stabilization Support Services. Today's press conference is devoted to the issue of the registration of IDPs. There's a warning here. Once we hear an air raid, you're supposed to go to the shelter. Today's speakers include Mr. Muzychenko, Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine, Valeriya Vershinina, Manager of the FECF-SSS, Karen Whiting, Deputy Head of the UNHCR, Johannes Fromholt, the Preparedness and Response Officer of the International Organization for Migration, and Serhii Biletskyi, Deputy Head of Kyiv Regional State Administration. Minister Muzychenko will concentrate on the new challenges in the conditions of the active hostilities. Once you want to take the floor, you address me and I will give you the mic. Welcome, everybody. Indeed, the situation that this country has found itself in is in the making for a long time. What we are saying is that this country has seen war not today, neither on the 24th of February. We saw the beginning of the war in the 2014. Since then, we have been facing major difficulties and challenges in terms of movement of citizens. If we go back to the period of 2014 to 22, we had almost 1.5 million IDPs moving from the temporarily occupied Crimean territory, then from the temporarily occupied Donetsk or Lugansk regions or the line of confrontation. The state has been implementing a number of programs to resolve major problems. This situation, I will remind you, continued until the 24th of February, when Ukraine was subject to the full-scale aggression by the Russian Federation. And the new challenges were quite new. Indeed, the state was not ready for such a scale of displaced persons in many areas. And since the end of February until the beginning of March, we were forced to make very quick decisions to meet the challenge. In the first place, we decided to expand the possibility of registering IDPs. This was supposed to be the first step to understand the scale of the problem. Different organizations used different numbers, edging to millions of Ukrainians. And indeed, it happened that way. Since the 24th of February, we have seen IDPs that have been officially registered in the amount of 3 million people. And I will remind you that these are including only officially applying and getting registered. The number of people who are moving from one territory to another and chose not to get registered should also be mounted. And we are here talking something in the proximity, in the ballpark figures. But we are aware that many people moved abroad and also internally. Since the March of this year, we have adapted a response system. In the first place, we expanded the system of registration of IDPs. The system that was functioning before was designed to go with quite other challenges. In February and March, through the system of registration, more than 2 million people were processed. This is, and I am confident in saying this, unprecedented situation. And this is why we need to expand the channels of communication and creating new possibilities. Since the March of 2022, this is what we have been doing, including the territorial communities. We have reset the software, and of course, the massive challenges led to a situation where we faced a lot of problems. In the first place, I'm underlying the human resource capabilities. The people who were supposed to register IDPs and respond to their challenges are the same people who were forced to move, including the social protection workers, and mainly they are females, plus a number of people going abroad and moving internally. It is safe to say that in March and at the beginning of April, in many occasions, we saw a situation where we had about 30 to 50% working, which is half, in the best case, of our staff. It was critically important to provide additional elements to cooperate with the population, with the citizens, and we updated the DEAR software at the beginning of April to get the IDPs registered. Why did we need registration? Why is it important? First of all, for us to make well-thought decisions and identify the locations where people were moving. Of course, this means additional burden for the infrastructure. We saw a community with a number of people living there, which was doubling over a couple of last months. In order to respond to this situation, it was important to be aware of the scale of the process. Secondly, the state has introduced a system of support for the IDPs, and starting with the month of March, we paid monthly payments in the amount of 2,000 hryvnias, and once we have disabled persons in the family, 3,000 hryvnias per month. Automatically, we registered IDPs that were moving on before the 24th of February, excuse me. So the program was very swiftly adapted, and it was targeting now not hundreds of thousands, but millions of the beneficiaries. Beginning with the May, when the Ukrainian military liberated the northern part of the country, Kyiv region, Sumy region, and when the occupiers left the territory of this country, we were forced to adapt the system in terms of its running and managing the system of registering IDPs. Since the month of May, we have been focusing on the situations where people have nowhere to go back to. Of course, they can't go back to the southern part of the country, to the east, including the citizens who, as a result of the hostilities and the aggression, they have lost their houses or their dwelling is beyond repair. So currently, our focus of the state policy is on the IDPs who are unable and have no possibility to go back to this place of their constant living. This is the matter of priorities. Of course, the state budget as of now is quite limited, and the war and the state of emergency does not contribute to the fulfillment of our budget, state budget. This is where we thank our international partners, including the UN system, which has very swiftly responded to the need and challenges that we have faced. The humanitarian aspect was the priority of our interaction of Ukraine and these international donors. We are also thankful to the NGO sector and international bodies who are advocating the need to support Ukrainians, and they try to identify the problems that we are facing here. And today we are stressing the fact that we have more or less wholesome picture which allows us to adequately respond to the challenges faced by the IDPs. We are also thankful for the fact that while the state budget is quite limited, the international bodies have decided and implemented a number of programs to support the Ukrainian population, including an additional package of payment to the citizens who suffered as the result of the Russian aggression and the incursion of the Russian Federation into Ukraine. While in the first month of war, we focused on the IDPs, today we are aware of the needs of the people living in the deoccupied territories, including an important fact here, the northern part of the Kyiv region, Sumy region, Chernihiv region, where there are a lot of settlements that have suffered in the hostilities, and people there are in need no less than those that are IDPs. Today, the high point of the agenda is to support the Ukrainians who are living in the temporarily occupied territories and in the zone of the active hostilities. Sometimes these include not mobile strata of population, and they are forced to continue living where they do. And in these circumstances, they are not able to be granted a status of IDPs because factually such a process has not taken place. So we are now trying to grant the access to these people for them to understand that they are not left behind and the state cares about them and wants to do everything that we can here. Here we should be aware of our capabilities of response in the context of the safety of securing some rights. The state continues to pay all the obligations, different social transfer subsidies, and so forth. In some cases here, of course, we are limited and people don't receive all the payment that they're supposed to be paid. Now, of course, where people counteract with the state through the banking system and they receive different payments through their personal accounts in the banks. Once people receive their pensions, for example, at the post office departments, of course, when it comes down to cash movement to the temporarily occupied territory, this is an extremely important, difficult issue. If the location is in the area of hostilities, sometimes with the help of the military, with the help of the Ukrainian armed forces, we can respond and do something about the delivery of cash of getting people out of there. We can do something here, but we should be thinking about how the infrastructure will be renovated in the context of the liberated or the occupied territories. The expertise tells us it takes time for people to come back, for the social workers to come back, and it is very important to support the infrastructure. Of course, after the territories are liberated, we understand that there are different levels of the work. Sometimes the archives have been destroyed, the logistics is not available. So one of the requests that we have at the ministry, and we pass it over to the international organizations to help us with the rapid response to renew the work of the bodies of the social protection, social centers for social protection. This is how we are going to solve all the problems. Let me reiterate that when it is good when we pay a person, but we are talking about a systematic work, because the infrastructure and the facilities that serve this local communities must be restored very quickly. The expertise of the settlements that have been ruined big time as the result of the incursion and occupation, once again, we turn to our partners to get this process streamlined in terms of renovating our infrastructure. We are not in the know what is in store for us, but basically we must respond to the needs of the population of today, the situation that we face in terms of security, of IDPs, and the need to meet the needs of the population to make sure that the country is run in a systemic way and we provide for the basic needs of the population. Thank you. Let me remind you about the time limit. You're not supposed to go beyond the time that you have allotted. The floor is given to Ms. Valeriya Vershinina, the advocacy manager of the SSS Charity Foundation. I see that the presentation is already on your screen. Thank you, Vitaly, for presenting all the problems and highlighting the major challenges. Indeed, until the 24th of February, we saw a little bit more than 1 million of IDPs. Now we have more than 4 million people who have been granted the certificates of IDPs, and more than 6 million people went abroad. These are people who are enjoying the security mechanisms. They're Ukrainian citizens and they can count for this system. So the system is called to get adapted to the increase of numbers. The ministry, as it has been highlighted now, is that it's not a matter of increase of the beneficiaries, but the major challenge is that part of the territory is not liberated. Many offices were looted or bombed. The software that we used was outdated, so we were not able to meet all the needs. We are talking about the renovation in the circumstances when the social services must be up and running and must adapt to a new number of beneficiaries. The problem that I would like to present today is a joint project of the UNHCR and the Stabilization Support Services. It will be implemented in the 11 parts of Ukraine, including Kyiv, Chernihiv regions, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Cherkovsk, Kirovogradsk, Ternopil, and Lviv regions. Altogether, the project will encompass 44 communities. What are our plans and what is the raison d'etre of what we are going to do? We want to expand the technical capacity in order for the people to be processed, and there must be a technical equipment provided for these 44 offices. We'll be working with the IDPs, granting them consultation, help, legal aid for them to be able to prepare to resolve their issues. And this will decrease the work burden of the social workers. As for the restoration of their pension, the subsidies, empowerments. So people are going to these workers, and sometimes it takes 10 minutes, sometimes half an hour and more, because people are supposed to receive high-quality services, and we hope that our work will lead to the decrease of burden of the workers of the social protection. Together with the Ministry of Social Policy and the Department of Social Protection, we will develop a number of steps to bring up the quality of work. We have heard that many of our workers are women. Some of them left the country, so it's high on the agenda to provide the workshops to bring up their qualifications. I will now tell you who are our goal communities. These are the representatives of the social system protection. You know, we know about the communities with 10 or 15 people coming as IDPs. Now we're talking about the thousands of people. So the process of registration must be systemized with the help of the local authorities. And these are the people who are now adapting to the procedures of processing IDPs, including the fact that we have seen different establishments and institutions that were paid from the budget and they are moving to new localities. This also is included in our project. And of course, we will help the IDPs per se. What are we planning to do? First of all, we want to have a detailed assessment of the needs of social security departments in the territories that have been deoccupied to see what kind of help they need. We are also counting not only on the United Nations High Office for the Refugees and other international bodies, putting at the focus of our activities a person, a human being, and we will see how we will increase our work with the IDPs, but not only with them. As the Deputy Minister has underlined, we have other strata of people that have suffered in the war. Since 2004, of course, IDPs made up the majority of them, but now we see the tenfold increase of people whose lives and health was damaged, people whose dwelling was destroyed, people who suffered as a result of the war crimes, and they are also in need of social protection. Every goal strata will be in our focus, and this is one of the key goals of our project. As for the resilience of our institutions and the people themselves, what we see now is that different kinds of people don't realize, understand how they can take advantage of their rights. And we see sometimes the chaotic attempts at solving their problem. We want to help with the situation to create more favorable circumstances and environment to receive legal aid so they can restore their rights, restore their payments. In 2014, the major problem was pension and the payments in the territories that were not occupied. Now the Ministry of Social Policy has responded very quickly to the issue of occupied territories, and people there are now receiving their payments. A couple of days ago, we identified the problem in Melitopol, and I can ensure you now that the problem has been solved. If we needed a couple of weeks to meet up the challenge, now it takes days, and this is important. The people who worked in the departments and directorates who didn't have expertise with working with the IDPs, now we are planning to renew the administrative cards. This is the IPOs that must be followed by the workers of the Center of Providing Social Services. For these services to be streamlined, these cards will be updated, and we hope that this will lead to the speeding up of the procedures and bringing the quality of serving the IDPs. Let me also tell you that we are ready to answer all your questions. We have the electronic mailbook, or we are available on the Facebook. Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker will be Karen Whiting, the Deputy Head of the UNHCR office. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I'm conscious of the time constraints that we've been warned of. Okay, so I want to very briefly then I want to thank very briefly then the partners that I'm up on this stage with here today. First, Ministry of Social Policy, but also Stabilization Support Services and the International Organization for Migration. UNHCR is very pleased to be a part of this project, which we believe will have important impacts not only for internally displaced persons, but also in terms of supporting the Ministry of Social Policy to carry out its mandate. Perhaps just to go back to some of the things that the Deputy Minister said about the importance of building and supporting state systems. So for UNHCR, we really value this partnership because it is within the framework of UNHCR's goal to support the government of Ukraine, and in this case in particular, the Ministry of Social Policy, to be able to provide support and assistance and protection to its own citizens. And so together with our memorandum of understanding with regards to multi-purpose cash assistance, UNHCR is very pleased to be able to support the ministry's capacity to register internally displaced persons. Again, I would like to acknowledge, as the Deputy Minister himself said, the amazing work done by the Ministry and the Departments of Social Policy in the field to register some 2.5 million internally displaced persons since the 24th of February. And we hope that this project will continue to support the ministry to carry out its amazing work. We also hope that through this project, we'll be able to support sustainable registration systems that will be fit for purpose. We hope that this will not need to happen again, but certainly systems that are technologically prepared and ready and adapted to the new circumstances. For us, the interesting part of this project is, of course, the three intertwined components, which we hope will create this strengthened IDP system. So the material assistance, so computers and other equipment, the webinars and information systems for the ministry, the Department of Social Policy, and the Centers for the Provision of Administrative Services, and then also the awareness raising for internally displaced persons themselves so that they understand the importance of becoming registered with the Ministry of Social Policy. So perhaps we hope that in 6 months we will be able to come back to you and report on the excellent results that we have achieved together. But I think for UNHCR, we again, just to reiterate that we are very pleased to be part of this partnership that brings together UN agencies, the Ministry of Social Policy, and Stabilization Support Services. So again, thank you very much, and we look forward to continued partnership.
Thank you, Karen. Наступним виступить Johannes Fromholt, офіцер з питань готовності та реагування.
The next to take floor is Johannes Fromholt, Preparedness and Response Officer from the Internal Organization for Migration.
So the government of Ukraine has been supporting an ambitious decentralization agenda at both central and local levels, with the purpose of progressively allocating increased capacities, ownership and budgets to local administrative units. The Russian invasion to Ukraine has led to a large-scale displacement, with millions having to leave their homes due to the war. A significant share of those who left have not been able to return home so far. Host communities in West Ukraine and elsewhere have stepped up in an unprecedented manner to support those fleeing the war. As part of such support, within 3 months, local authorities have registered nearly 2.5 million individuals as internally displaced persons, facilitating access to additional levels of support to the vulnerable IDP families. IOM supports local authorities across Ukraine to respond to a crisis of such magnitude. So far, IOM has assisted more than 220,000 unique individuals, both with NFIs, multi-purpose cash, shelter support, etc. Timely and acute registration of displaced persons is key to developing an evidence-based humanitarian response that addresses the most pressing needs of war-affected population. And this is, of course, something that both the Deputy Minister and other colleagues have mentioned as well. In response to requests by the Ministry of Social Protection and other government bodies, with the support of the Government of Canada and in coordination with our partners present here today, UNHCR and the charity fund Stabilization Support Services, IOM is honored to provide technical equipment and other types of support to Ramada authorities across Ukraine. As a pilot effort, IOM has already delivered technical equipment to Ramada authorities in the Zakarpattia Oblast, which presently records the presence of over 300,000 IDPs. With this assistance, registration workers who often did the records by hand will be able to rely on a digital database and effectively transfer data to the unified registry. In addition, to provide the equipment and in line with the program presentation to the government of Ukraine, IOM will also contribute to building capacities of registration workers through trainings, awareness raising activities, and contribute to raising the awareness among IDPs about the possibility of benefits of the registration. IOM is fully committed to further expanding our support to local authorities and to build data gathering capacities at the local level in Ukraine in support of local preparedness and resilience, including by engaging youth, women, and civil society in reporting on the emergency and the needs in their communities, and by building local capacity for evidence-based and gender-sensitive policymaking. A participatory approach and strong ownership by local and national authorities are principal to ensuring the sustainability of this initiative. Thank you.
Дякую, Йоханнес. Наступним виступить Серhii Biletskyi, заступник голови.
Thank you. The next to take the floor is Serhii Biletskyi, the Deputy Head of Kyiv Regional State Administration, who will highlight the challenges that his department faces. Dear participants of this presentation, in the first place, I would like to thank, on behalf of the Kyiv Regional Military Administration, Alexei Kuleba, and on behalf of all my team, to help that we have received for renovation of the Kyiv province. This issue is not urgent not only for Kyiv region. Evacuation of people from the hostilities area, preserving their lives, is the main task of the state. Our administration and our people has met the enemy from the first day of the war, and we have become this focal point of meeting and rebutting the aggression. Their plan to grab Ukrainian capital in a couple of days failed, and this is due to the heroic defense of the Ukrainian military, who were outnumbered and outgunned by the enemy, and we had to pay a high price for this. We are now aware of more than 1,300 dead among the civil population. Active hostilities were held in the territory of 3 regions of Ukraine, of Kyiv district, Bucha, Hostomel, and Brovary. This is the territories that suffered major damages, but we have registered the results of the Russian bombings and attacks in other areas. Since the end of February until the beginning of March, 15 communities were occupied. The departments of social services were almost blocked there. Most suffered, of course, was the Bucha region. The Russian forces killed not only people, but also our promises, including 80 computers, printers, and other logistics. They have damaged our departments and our localities. Under the active hostilities, we were able to streamline the work of our services. On the 3rd of March, together with the military units, law enforcement, we were able to evacuate from the occupied territories of Bucha, Vyzhhorod, and respectively Brovary regions, more than 100,000 civilians. Most of them were evacuated to the western part of this country after the territory has been liberated. The Kyiv region was one of the leading centers of receiving the IDPs. Currently, we have on our registers 2,080 temporarily IDPs. The lion's share of them come from Mykolaiv, Luhansk, and Donetsk and Kherson regions. If we compare the situation with the pre-war, then we had registered 33,000 IDPs. That is to say, in the environment of the full-scale war, the number of IDPs has grown fourfold. In the Kyiv region, we have developed places for temporarily hosting IDPs. These are the facilities provided by the universities, dormitories, that is to say. And such facilities take in thousands of IDPs. We have also developed the so-called module temporarily settlements in Borodyanka and Bucha. We are also planning such centers to be opened in Makariv, in Kukhariv, and in the community of Ivankiv. We are also planning to open up in Dimir and Velika Dimir and other settlements such module cities. They are supposed to house those who have lost their places of residence and were forced to get evacuated. But we also can underline the fact that in the majority of cases, the IDPs are staying with their relatives or are living in other people's places. We have set up cooperation with the number of international donors, including 6 international, 10 domestic, 31 NGOs. The major problem that we face here is to get people off the records and getting people back to where they lived before the war and getting them off the register of the register of IDPs. On behalf of the Kyiv military administration, I would like to thank the UNHCR for their help and their vision for the Kyiv region. Indeed, this is the first time when we face the IDPs problems. It was back in 2014, but since the war broke out, the number of people who were forced to leave their homes has grown many times. And we've seen the victims of the military action, people whose loved ones were killed or are missing. So there is a new need to register IDPs in their new places of living, to bring up the quality of their service. This is where we need different kind of equipment, and also we need to protect our software from hacking. Thank you. We seem to be quite on time. We have a couple of questions that we received from our departments in different localities. I think the first goes to the Deputy Minister. Which part of the internally displaced persons are not yet registered, and what do you think should be done to bring that number down? I think the number is very difficult to identify. I think we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people who have been displaced. They have not been registered. They were not in need to get some additional payment from the state, because the fact that you are registered means that you will receive some payments from the state budget, and also will help you to adapt to the social structure of the local communities. If some person needs some special needs, for example, people with special needs, families with many children who need special living conditions, of course, such people will be the first to get registered, to get the aid from the local communities and from the local government. Of course, people who are dealing with the challenges on their own. And there are many of those. They did not get registered and conversely did not turn to the local authorities. This is every person's choice. Everyone has to make a choice here whether he or she needs an additional package of aid, and then they will make up their minds. Of course, as for the state, we'd better see the full picture to be able to respond to such challenges and to project our future steps. Thank you. The next question from the Ukraine Forum. What about the quality of registering people who are IDPs? What is the quality level? Let me answer you in this way. What you have seen today, and many people who have taken the floor here at the podium, are saying that locally our system needs to be supported. And we are talking in the first place about the territories that were invaded. But I think that we are missing the picture here. You see, the focal point is this. Communities need support. But I think what is more to the point is the people who are processing the documentation. These are people for whom it is very difficult to get their work organized. They are not paid from the local government, they are paid from the government budgets, state budget. And this is where I would like my international partners to pay special attention to this. The whole system, the integral system, will be less vulnerable if we now concentrate our work on the centers for providing social services. Their capabilities will be expanded, of course, but there are people at the back offices who are physically processing. I think it was rightly said that we should analyze the needs for us to respond to them in a quality way, because we can set up comfortable conditions to consult people to receive their documents. But it may take some time for people to get their documentation and paperwork process to deliver on their requests. There must be established a link of intertwined decisions. I would like my international partners to pay the attention to the level of our districts, of our rayons, to provide the system that responds in a systematic way to the requests of the people. Another issue is what are the criteria of people that you take on board to work for the back offices. We were focusing firstly on the communities where the number of IDPs has increased. That is the first criteria, where the number of IDPs. Second criteria is whether these departments were the victims of the hostilities. We paid attention whether the offices were looted, were damaged. We understand that there is a greater need to renovate such offices, to renew their work. Now, a third criteria is their agreeing to be able to start working to take on new people. And I would also like to say that in the process of assessment, we at one point saw the response from the back office, a response like, we're well, we're good, we don't need your help at this point in time. This is where we realize that these people are clearly understanding their role and their ability to respond. As a follow-up to this question, can the evacuated departments take part in this project? Yeah, they can. Ask questions from the floor. Ukrinform. I, as an investigative journalist, we have started to begin IDPs, hosting them, registering them, providing them jobs. And you know, you are so good in telling us how things are moving good. What I have personally confronted, it was a situation of misunderstanding with the issue of collaboration. Locally, the local government officials of the administrations are somehow countering. I have here a response, and I will make you available of this paper. I will give it over to the Deputy Minister. And this document says that some special department informs you that we have passed a decision on renewing of our payment for the IDPs. You see, here in Kyiv, we are ready to hold those people, but administration is doing everything they can to force these people to go elsewhere, to go abroad, to work there, to receive help there, to work as janitors and other manual work. Let me respond. The Center for providing jobs is very specific. You see, you are talking in general terms on how the NGOs and the state must respond to such situations and to make sure that these people adapt to the circumstances. But let us not be ignorant of the fact. The person that, in your case, or his employer, turned to this center, and they have their own backgrounds. There are issues. A person perhaps may not have registered in the social protection system. The employer must have had some issues in terms of taxation. Every case is specific. We should be aware of why the situation has emerged. I don't think that the employment service has passed such a decision. Such a decision can be processed, can be alleged, and can be appealed for people to take responsibility. But the human factor is something we should not brush away. You have said a serious word here, collaboration. I don't see any evidence of collaborating here. The matter is to see into detail. I will take on board and will make sure that this document is processed and analyzed. But I want you to understand, we are not rosy. We don't enjoy the rosy picture. We are not saying and claiming that we are ideal. No, there are issues that we faced before the full-scale war began in terms of the infrastructure development, in terms of response. We were engaging and beginning the decentralization process, division of the system of responsibilities. Everything was done to make better the system of decision-making. Now, in the context of the war, these issues have become more serious. They have been aggregated. The number of people who have been efficient in their workplace has decreased indeed. Of course, we don't have robots today that have stayed where they worked before the war, and they are working as they used to do. You see, we're talking about millions of people that have been displaced, and it would be irresponsible to claim that there are people who are still working in the Center for Social Services. Those people were just ordinary people, and they are facing, and they have been faced with the challenge that everyone here in Ukraine is changing. So I would like to call on you not to make such high-profile statements and accusations, but I am sure there must be a very good substantiation for that response. Another question that I have from the audience, the sustainability project. Question is whether the problem will receive long-term sustainability support. It will be, who's going to answer? The project is targeting two goals. First, the level of awareness of the new personnel and bringing up the technical support for the registration process. So this is a long-term and sustainable vision. People who are now joining the system, who will be in the system for some time, at least we are hoping that they will. And last question, I promise. What is the paperwork for the new employees, where they will be paid from? What is the system of the payroll? The issue of employment in the economic situation is intricately intertwined with the general issues. We understand the problems, especially in the territories that are currently occupied or are systematically bombed or attacked or are in the close proximity of the line of contact. Of course, it also reflects the job market. In order to sustain the people and the opportunity for them to get new jobs, I think we have allocated 200 million hryvnias to pay for the employer who will be employing IDPs at the level of the minimal wage for some time to go. The employers are able to take advantage of this algorithm. If everything corresponds to the procedure, they will be receiving such an aid. Mechanisms have been developed. The infrastructure of our centers is overloaded. It is overburdened because we are talking in many occasions twice the number of population that we used to be processing and working with. The same goes for the employment issue and for granting people an opportunity to work. We are also thinking about the relocation programs. Of course, these schemes are working where it is possible for them to be implemented there. This is where the state will promote such programs for people to get new employment and promoting the employers who are ready to participate. Thank you very much. I am done with my questions. Thank you for your time and your presentations, and I wish you a very successful launch of your project.